Hello students, welcome to Learner's Planet, problem solving session 2 of metals and non-metals. In this session, we will be discussing questions related to the reactivity series of metals. So let's take up our first question. It is, name two metals which do not react with oxygen. I think this is a very easy question. Just recall what all are the metals which do not react with oxygen. What are they? They are silver and gold. So this is a very easy question. Now the next question is, name two metals which can form hydrides with hydrogen. Now children, we know that in hydrides, what is the state of hydrogen? The state of hydrogen there is H minus. That is, H is present in an anionic form. So when hydrogen is present in an anionic form, it means it has to accept electrons. So those metals which are more electropositive than hydrogen will give electrons to it. So what are the metals which are more electropositive? They are sodium, as they lie below hydrogen in the group. Say in the first group, what are the elements present? They are hydrogen, lithium, sodium, potassium, rubidium, cesium. Right children? So here what happens that your lithium is very small in size. So it cannot give electron to hydrogen. Just remember that. Lithium is very small in size, so it cannot give its electron easily to hydrogen. Okay? Whereas sodium can give electron to hydrogen. When hydrogen gas is passed through heated sodium, right, what will be formed is, it will form sodium hydride. So 2 NaH is formed. In this case children, sodium is present in electropositive form and hydrogen is present in its negative form. Any other metal which can form hydride? It is again your potassium. If hydrogen gas is passed through heated potassium, what is it going to form? It will form potassium hydride. So it is forming 2KH, that is potassium hydride. Likewise, calcium also forms calcium hydride, that is Ca plus of H2 gas. And what compound it is going to form? It will form CaH2, that is your calcium hydride. But the reactivity of calcium is less as compared to sodium. Likewise, your magnesium, if hydrogen gas is passed through magnesium, again what will be the product formed? The product formed would be magnesium hydride, that is MgH2. So out of these metals, any metal you can quote. So this completes our question. Now let's take up our next question. It is, which of the following pairs will give displacement reactions? Now for such type of question, keep one thing in mind. What is that most important thing? I'll put a note here. What is that important thing children? The important thing is that a more reactive metal, displaces less reactive metal from its salt solution. Now for this, what you need to remember again, the reactivity series. Okay. Now let's take up the reactivity series. Displacement. Now of these there are, in our first question, there are two elements. What are they? They are iron here and the second one is silver. Now let's take up the reactivity series. What was it? It is potassium, sodium, calcium, magnesium, aluminium. Then what all is there after aluminium? It is zinc, iron, tin, lead, hydrogen, and then is copper, mercury, silver and gold. Every time, for every question, I am writing the reactivity series so that you are able to memorize it. You have to memorize it. There is no other option. In this case, children, what is the salt solution? Ferrous sulfate. What is the metal? Silver. Will the displacement reaction take place? That is FeSO4 plus silver metal. Will the displacement reaction take place? No. No reaction. Why? Because silver is less reactive than iron. So what can happen here? Silver cannot displace iron from its solution, salt solution. So your answer would be there is no displacement reaction because silver is less reactive than iron and it cannot displace iron from its salt solution. So you can easily keep silver in iron sulfate solution. But if I am doing vice versa, there is silver sulfate and iron, there will be a displacement reaction. Now the next is silver nitrate solution and copper metal. So again we have got silver nitrate, AgNO3 plus of copper metal. So now find out which is more reactive from the reactivity series I have written here. Which is more reactive, silver or copper? Silver is lying below hydrogen. Copper is present also below hydrogen, but in this series copper is above silver. So which will be more reactive, children? Copper. So what will copper do? Copper will replace silver from silver nitrate and it will form CuNO3 twice plus of silver metal. So here what is happening? Displacement reaction is taking place and what is the product formed? It is copper nitrate. So what is the thing to be remembered here? This can be any solution, any metal of all of these. What is the thing to be remembered is a more reactive metal displaces less reactive metal from its salt solution. The metals which lie above in the reactivity series are more reactive and which lie below are less reactive. I hope this type of question is clear to you and you'll be able to solve such type of questions easily. Let's take up our next question. It is the same type of a question. Which of the following pairs will give displacement reaction? Now here what are the metals, children? The metal is copper sulfate and magnesium. So if I'll write it A, what is the formula of copper sulfate? It is CuSO4. It is reacting with what? Magnesium metal. Will there be any reaction, children? Which lies above in the reactivity series? Magnesium, of course. It is a very reactive metal. Whereas copper is present below hydrogen. So it is a less reactive metal. So there will be a displacement reaction and it will form MgSO4, that is magnesium sulfate, and copper solid will be deposited. Now this is what? This is magnesium sulfate. So there is a displacement reaction. So what I can write here is, now what is the next thing? Aluminium chloride and tin. Now again, aluminium chloride, what will be the formula? AlCl3. And what is the formula of tin? Sn, solid. Now here, which is more reactive, children? Which comes above in the reactivity series and which comes below in the reactivity series? Which is below? It is tin which is coming below aluminium, right? It is aluminium above and tin below. So which is more reactive? Aluminium. And tin is less reactive. So will there be any displacement reaction? No. Reaction. Is it clear, students? What you have to do is always you have to just recall your reactivity series. That's it. The one which lies below is less reactive. The one which lies above is more reactive. And always a more reactive metal displaces a less reactive metal from its solution. I hope you can solve such type of questions now. Let's take up another question. Yeah, it is what are the products formed when magnesium oxide is dissolved in water? Tell me what happens when oxides are dissolved in water. What is the product formed? It should be a hydroxide and what? And hydrogen gas should be evolved. So, oxides dissolve in water forming their respective hydroxides. Now let's write the equation, that is when magnesium oxide is MgO, solid. When it is dissolved in water, H2O, that is liquid. What would be the products formed? The products formed would be only MgOH twice, that is no hydrogen is released. When oxides are dissolved in water, no hydrogen is released. So what it will form is magnesium hydroxide, MgOH twice, aqueous. Now what is it? It is a base. Likewise, your sodium oxide dissolves in water forming sodium hydroxide. Potassium oxide dissolves in water forming, potassium hydroxide, and so on and so forth. Now let's take up our next question. So whenever an oxide is dissolved in water, what are the products formed? It is a hydroxide. Oxide of what? Oxide of a metal, not a non-metal. Non-metal oxides dissolve in water forming their acids. Now our next question is, write a balanced chemical equation for the reaction of manganese. It is not manganese, it is manganese with very dilute nitric acid. Now what is the formula of manganese? It is Mn, solid. Now this reacts with what? HNO3. And this is what? This is very dilute. So it forms manganese nitrate, that is MnNO3 whole twice, plus hydrogen gases evolved. Now children, you must be remembering that I told you in my sessions that this nitric acid is a very strong oxidizing agent. So when it is dilute or it is concentrated, what it does is the hydrogen, it oxidizes the hydrogen gas evolved and forms what? Water. And itself gets reduced to nitrogen oxides, that is N2O or NO. N2O or NO. So here what is the concentration of nitric acid? It is very dilute. Then only hydrogen gas will be evolved. If it is just dilute or concentrated, hydrogen gas will be not evolved. Now let's take up our next question. A black substance is formed on the surface of copper, right, on prolonged heating, on the surface of copper on prolonged heating with oxygen of air. What is the chemical formula of that black substance? Write the balanced chemical equation for the reaction. So, on prolonged heating, say that is Cu solid, it is prolonged heated in the presence of oxygen gas. So, what will be the product formed? It is copper 2 oxide. The product formed here is CuO, and this is what? CuO solid. And what is the name of this? It is copper 2 oxide. Your copper metal doesn't react with oxygen even on heating it. But if you are heating it for a long time, then only it will react with oxygen forming copper oxide. And this copper oxide has a black color, or it gives black color to the copper. Now your silver and gold, they do not react with oxygen even at high temperature. So this was your reaction of copper with oxygen. Now let's take up our next question, children. It is a multiple choice question. Why does aluminium oxide behave as an acidic oxide? In water, it forms aluminium hydride which loses ions. What are the products which aluminium oxide forms in water? Say your Al2O3 in water. What are the products formed? It would be, what are the products formed, children? The products formed would be aluminium hydroxide. Now, is it an acidic oxide? What it is forming with water? It is forming aluminium hydroxide. It means that it is a base. So this option is wrong. Now let's take up the next option. It reacts with a base giving salt and water. Let's see its reaction with a base. That is aluminium oxide Al2O3 solid. Let's take up the base, that is sodium hydroxide 2NaOH, that is aqueous. And with this it is forming, what it is forming here is 2NaAlO2, that is sodium aluminate plus of H2O. So is this showing its basic nature? It reacts with a base forming salt and water. Here's what it is showing. It is showing its acidic nature. That is, acids react with bases forming salt and water. So this is showing its acidic nature. That is, aluminium oxide is an acidic oxide. Why? Because it reacts with a base forming salt and water. So what would be a right answer? This. It turns litmus red. Is it the thing? No. So what will be a right answer here? It would be acidic oxide, blue litmus red. When you dissolve in water, what will happen? Litmus shows reaction when it is moist. So with water, what it is forming? It is forming aluminium hydroxide. It is a base. So it should turn red litmus blue. It should not turn litmus red. So our right option here is, it reacts with a base giving salt and water. Al2O3 is also a basic oxide because it forms base with water, or it reacts with acid. Any acid you can take. I am taking the simplest acid, that is HCl. It reacts with acid, and what it forms? It forms AlCl3, that is salt and water. So this will be your answer. So what is aluminium oxide, children? Aluminium oxide is an amphoteric oxide because it forms salt and water with both acid and bases. Now let's move to our next question. What are the products formed when metals react with water and steam? So what are the products formed when metal reacts with water? It forms what? It forms metal hydroxide and hydrogen gases evolved. So it is forming metal hydroxide plus hydrogen. But when metal reacts with steam, so let's take up this example. Give me any example of this. Any example we can take. Sodium. Sodium is the best example. Or we can take the example of calcium. Calcium solid reacts with water and it forms what? It will form calcium hydroxide. That is CaOH twice and hydrogen gases evolved. So any metal, it gives such type of reaction. And metal with steam reacts with steam. And what is the product formed, children? The products formed are metal oxide plus hydrogen. What are the metals which react with steam? It is iron, zinc, tin, lead, aluminium, any one of them. So let me take the example of iron here. Iron reacts with steam and what would be the product formed here? Iron oxide, that is Fe3O4 plus of hydrogen gas. Now to balance this, what I can do here is 3 Fe and oxygen is 4, so I have to take 4 H2O. And here how many hydrogen would be released? 4 H2. Now this is what, children, this is iron 2, 3 oxide. So these are the examples of metals reacting with water as well as with steam. Now let's move to our next question. That is this. Why calcium starts floating on the surface when it is treated with water? Now let's take up the equation. That is calcium solid with water. What will be the product formed here? I have just now told you. What are the products formed? It is calcium hydroxide and H2 gas. Now what happens here is that if I am taking a very reactive metal like sodium or potassium, what happens that large amount of heat is also evolved. So it catches fire. But in this case, children, heat is not evolved. What happens here is that the hydrogen gas bubbles stick to calcium. Now, as a result of which, this calcium becomes light and it starts floating on water. This hydrogen gas, due to the sticking of this hydrogen gas to calcium, it starts floating in water. Okay, sticks to the surface. Now this is another question, that is write the balanced chemical equation. Write the balanced chemical equation for the reaction of lead with steam. I have told you metals like aluminium, zinc, iron, tin, lead, what they do is they react with steam, that is H2O, steam. And what is the product formed with steam? It is always an oxide. So what will be the oxide formed? It would be PbO, or it is lead oxide. Plus, what will be the thing evolved? That is hydrogen gas. So always remember that a metal reacts with steam forming oxide and respective hydrogen and the hydrogen gas. Now let's take up our next question here. A piece of sodium metal catches fire when placed in a glass beaker filled with water. It's the same question which is repeated. Sodium metal reacts with water, forming what? I have just now discussed this question. It forms what? NaOH, and hydrogen gas is evolved, plus lot of heat is produced. Due to this heat produced, what happens? The hydrogen gas catches fire. So this question we have discussed. Now moving to the next question. The reactivity of magnesium with water is less than calcium because. How we can analyze that the reactivity is less? Heat is not evolved in the reaction of magnesium with cold water. Heat is also not evolved in the reaction of calcium with cold water. There also heat is not evolved. So this option is ruled out. When you are solving multiple choice questions, children, you should start ruling out the things first. With cold water, magnesium forms magnesium hydroxide, whereas calcium forms calcium oxide. No, oxides are formed only with steam, not with cold water or hot water. So this option is also ruled out. Now our next option is magnesium reacts with hot water, whereas calcium reacts with cold water. Now this is the one which is correct. With what type of water magnesium is reacting? With hot water. Magnesium gives no reaction with cold water, whereas your calcium reacts with cold water. Now magnesium is smaller than calcium in size. That is of no use. So what is the right option? C. Now let's take up likewise the sodium. Sodium and potassium are more reactive than calcium. Why? Because heat is released when they react with water. Iron is less reactive with water than calcium. Why? Because iron reacts with steam. It doesn't react with water. So this is the way how we analyze the reactivities. And let's move to our next question here. Aluminium metal does not react with water under ordinary conditions because we know that aluminium reacts with air and forms a layer of oxide. So because of a layer of aluminium carbonate on the surface, is this the thing? No, aluminium does not react with carbon dioxide of air. So this is wrong. Because of a layer of aluminium oxide on the surface. So what is this, children? This is a right option. Because of the layer of aluminium nitrides, it doesn't react with nitrogen. And all of these, this is also wrong. So these are the questions related to the reactivities of metals. So now I'll conclude this session. We will be meeting for the next session and we will solving few more questions related to the properties of metals. So thank you very much for your patience.